Hi, please come. Please,
Please.
do sit down, please. Mr. Asif Yusuf Tantre. Wonderful. You are a lovely professional university pass out. How did you find lovely professional university? The academic environment there?
So lovely professional university gave me the opportunity to be there. The academic environment was to a good, larger extent good. There were some issues. There were issues on the part of the faculty, the quality of the faculty, the research and development department, and in fact on the admission side, there is an open admission there in the university.
Open door policy. And civil engineering laboratory also, I believe, requires an upgradation. Certain things. That's of course matter. I'm happy that you've passed out. And I would like to understand, you are a cricket fan. What is ball tampering?
So ball tampering is usually done by to assess the bowlers. The upper surface of the ball is usually tampered either by your nails or by just hitting the ball to the boundary wall, just to make it rough for reverse swing. To assist, it helps in assisting the bowlers.
Then you are the biggest player in match fixing who has been extradited to India. Who is he? The biggest player in match fixing.
I believe Hansi Krone.
Nancy Crone is no more.
So I'm not sure about.
Somebody from England who's been extradited recently.
Today's newspaper, yesterday news.
So I'm not aware.
Forget about it. And if you're not up to date, you need to understand, because this is what has finished the game. Cricket was known as a gentleman's game. What was it known as? It was never known for the wrong kind of reasons, that all kinds of match fixing, ball tampering, and this and that started happening. Have you read any poetry about cricket from Lord Tennyson? You have not read. Well, it's good to read what cricket used to be, and what cricket in the world's most wanted are also part of the game of cricket. Right? So, big time money, big time betting. And you see, India has risen very sharply in the arena of cricket. Till about 40 years ago, you remember any names 40 years ago? Paulie Umrigan, Lala Amarnath, Pankaj Roy.
So Patodi. So we have Bishan Singh Bedi.
You have heard Paulie Umrigan?
Yes, sir. He's
He's a batsman or a bowler?
So he was a batsman.
He was a batsman, sure.
Yes, sir.
You're a very good batsman. Yes, batsman. Tell me, now that you are from Kashmir, and we are all very concerned about the future of Kashmir, the well-being of the Kashmiri people. We have several groups of diplomats visiting the Kashmir Valley and Kashmir. How would you react to the latest visit of envoys to Kashmir and their observations thereat?
So according to what the government claims, it is a positive thing to have from the envoys. The envoys there have spoken positively about Kashmir, and the recent visit of the envoys is significant because of two reasons. First, Donald Trump visiting India, and second, we have our Ministry of External Affairs visiting Brussels in the coming time. These are the two significant events, and I think with the way the envoys are positive about it, it's a good thing. But there are some issues. First and foremost is that the envoys meet a localized group, and that localized group is filtered out. There have been envoys who had backed off earlier. The previous visit, they were from EU. They had backed off because they were not being given the clearance to talk to common people. That's an issue. Because the time you don't speak to common people, you will not be able to assess the real ground situation. But yes, the situation in the valley is normal. It's attaining normalcy, it's a good thing.
Tell me very honestly that these abrogations of Article 370 and the 35A will help that area, Jammu and Kashmir, in any further, say, what will become very different from we had earlier before that abrogation. So, what is your view about that?
So, in my personal opinion, Article 370 was a temporary provision. So, it was a temporary provision. Citing development as an important ingredient that it hindered development, I think it's not a very pragmatic way to look at it. Yes, Kashmir had already been an integral part of India. Kashmir in itself belonged to India, and as stated by the Constitution of Jammu and Kashmir, and as well as the Constitution of India. That has not changed. We are and we will be an integral part of India. But yes, the development on the part of industrial development that had not been there adequate. To say industrial development in the valley, and there are the positive green shoots which look up that we might see development in future because of this. But for that, it's really important that political stability and the environment in the valley and in Jammu is normal, is stable. Only then we will have economic activity going on a smoother.
There's general feeling that the Kashmiri youth actually have not been properly integrated into the Indian environment in respect to the employment, in respect to good education. And because of this particular provision of Article 370, Kashmiri youth most of the time remained in their very comfort zones. They have restricted their activity within that regional or local setup, and they seldom come out to go to the other parts of the India and work there. Are you agree? Would you agree, or it will help in this way that Kashmiri youth now will be properly integrated through entire parts of India?
Sorry, sir, I don't believe the view. I think so people like me, there are hundreds of Kashmiris who already study in various parts of the country. Almost, I think 95% of the engineering school students from the valley study outside the valley, and yes, we don't have the level of private sector in Kashmir. That's why people try to be inclined more towards the government sector, which is prominent, which is in fact the major employment provider to the youth. That's one thing. This is the reason I think people tend to be in that comfort zone rather than the other way. Because I don't believe that Article 370 had a symbolic appearance for people in the valley, but I don't agree that.
Okay, fine. You know about artificial intelligence coming up very strongly because of fourth industrial revolution or whatever may be that. And you also know that there is a radical transformations in the field of work and employment. Most of the employment scenario are now in the unorganized sector. And the organized sector, there is a diminishing opportunity now. With less number of employment scenario in the organized sector and the expansion of the unorganized sector, then the emergence of artificial intelligence may put, I think, further restrictions about the employment scenario. And the situation seems to be very scary. What is your take on this situation?
So I believe, sir, technology does create a challenge for employment, but that is the thing that we see. But it creates jobs we usually don't see. The same thing happened when Industrial Revolution was there. When Industrial Revolution came up, we had Luddite revolution, which went against Industrial Revolution and said that it will erode jobs. But it never happened. In fact, new jobs were created, new avenues were created, and I believe the same way. Yes, there are challenges in the employment sector. There are challenges for the upskilling of the labor force. The labor force needs to be aligned to the way innovation and artificial intelligence is coming up. So I'll cite one example. I think so there are 5,000 employees in Hyderabad working to upgrade artificial intelligence in itself. So I think those are the job creations of artificial intelligence, and I believe that
So you do not believe that will much impact the
there are challenges to address those issues, but I believe that it will definitely create more jobs rather than curtail the jobs. But we have to address the challenge for it.
how you will ensure then the innovations and creativity amongst our younger generation, because this is not happening in our school environment. So how we can ensure, because unless and until it is being ensured, then they will not be enterprising, and if the entrepreneurial skill is not being, then they may not have those income generation ability.
So there are various ways for it. First and foremost, I think education as a foundation tool. We need to impart education, technical education in the curriculum at the schools. Then the number of ITIs, vocational training institutes, that need to be upgraded. The infrastructure of the vocational training institutes is not up to the mark right now, and I believe that needs to be addressed well. And then coming at the employment level, there needs to be incentives to the industry to make sure that they have adequate infrastructure and adequate training centers for the laborers to be upskilled, for the workers to be upskilled.
Yes.
So, do you think Saaf Faisal made a good decision by quitting the IAS? I mean, in terms of what he could have contributed if he continued in the IAS, wouldn't that have been more significant than what he is doing as a politician?
So I believe protest is a part to strengthen democracy.
We are talking about the protest part. I'm asking you his options as an IAS officer in the valley and now as a politician.
So as an IAS officer, he had a very good opportunity to make sure, and he already had done some significant steps in the education sector. So for example, if we have in Jammu and Kashmir, we have Rahbar Taaleem, that the education, the teachers for the SSA, Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan. For them, they had a very faulty recruitment process, and they were teachers who were not up to the mark. They were not trained well. They were not educated well. He changed the policy, and he made sure that only aspirants who had bachelor's in education be recruited as teachers, and there will be an examination process of the already existing teachers and to upgrade their skills. And
These sort of steps should not have been very popular with the politicians.
so I believe
Would be happy with such steps.
as a politician, he has.
I'm saying what he did, was it popular with the politicians of the
There
valley?
was an uproar about the policy, and there was, in fact, in the government too, there was a teachers union protest which happened almost 15 days, but the government then sorted out and the policy was out there.
But so you think that he might do a better job as a politician, even better job.
I think the time will decide whether he will be a good one.
How will he fare in this family-based politics of the valley? You already have some dominant dynasts. So he is the newcomer in that sense.
Yes, sir. So one thing that is a very good thing that has happened in Kashmir because of his joining politics. We see radicalization of the youth. We see alienation among the youth. But Shah Faisal has always been looked as a youth icon, and I believe that his joining politics was a very strategic and also a very good move in that context, because so he had started. A crowdfunding for his newly formed political party.
How would he compare with Arvind Kejriwal? You're talking about crowdfunding, so something like this has been done here. How would he compare?
Arvind Kejriwal had different challenge, and Shah Faisal had very different challenge. Arvind Kejriwal here was a part of the system which was already there, and he just came at the back of fighting corruption.
Yes, but he was also an insurgent in one sense. Yes. Insurgent against the established order, the Congress, the BJP, etc. Faisal is also an insurgent against the established order in the valley.
Yes, sir, but I believe the challenges are very different.
Challenges are different. Obviously, Delhi and Kashmir. Would you also at some stage make a similar decision? Suppose you join the IAS. Could we find you after 5 or 10 years that Asif is also now on the similar route?
So I believe So right now I want to be a part of the system, and I believe that I'll be a part of the system to make a change there rather than the other way around.
No, at this stage, suppose you get into the IAS and you join the Kashmir cadre, Jammu Kashmir cadre. In fact, not Jammu Kashmir cadre. Now you'll join the Agbut cadre. All right. So you'll be the Agbut cadre and posted to Jammu Kashmir. As a deputy commissioner there in some district, any district, what sort of priorities would you establish for development of the area? We are talking about development, Article 370 abrogation. So what should be the priorities at the district level as the deputy commissioner?
So as an administrator, so there are sectors in which Kashmir is known for, in which our region especially.
Some specific district where you could do.
So for example, if we talk of South Kashmir, so the region where I belong, so horticulture is the prominent sector, and I believe that the youth, especially with the level of unemployment there in the valley, I believe horticulture is a very good avenue. The food processing industry is very nascent. Is that very
Why has this potential not been developed much? What went wrong in the last few decades?
We have seen in the last 3 decades the political turmoil in the valley, and especially in the past decade, we have seen on a level annually 3 months of protest have been there from 2008 up till now. It sets a bad environment for investment, for any investment, and so I'll give you an example. For example, franchises like Domino's or even KFC's, they don't want to invest there because they feel that it will be.
There is a demand for their products. Is there a demand there?
Yes, sir. There is a demand, and there are outlets coming the valley, but without that brand name.
Asif, we could go on. There's so many things about Kashmir, but we don't want it to be entirely Kashmir focused, so I will skip some of my thoughts on that. Tell me first, very interesting amongst your hobbies, I do not understand this name, the term
So concrescence. So at the college level, I mean in the university, we started this organization Concrescence. So the primary object. So I, along with my friend there, it was my colleague. So we started this organization with the prime objective to create a synergy between the seniors and the juniors.
What does the word mean in the first place?
Concrescence actually, so literally it comes from from dentistry. It is amalgamation of 2 different things. Amalgamation of two different entities. Yes, sir. The filling that dentists use just to connect the 2. So that way we thought it has resemblance to concrete in civil engineering that we usually say. And that's how.
Does it refer to the desirable quality of a filling to merge with the tooth, concrescence? Okay, thank you. I didn't know, and that is what you targeted in this. And what was your experience? It was successful?
Yes, it's
attaining that objective?
Yes, it's working there. It has so far organized good interactions. There are some guest lectures too interacted by the organization. And
Positive side of the anti-ragging.
so actually LPU had always been an anti-ragging institute, and we never, so in my 4 years of experience, we never witnessed that.
No, I was not asking whether there is ragging in your institute. I'm saying this is a positive version of the anti-ragging. We don't hear so often. Anti-ragging is commonly heard of. But okay, we will leave that also. Very interesting. We would like to hear in what ways you did that. Tell me from your interest, you used the word Shah Faisal's decision was strategic. Again, not to focus on too much, I'm leaving it. I would have liked to ask you in what sense. But tell me, what is the fundamental strategic orientation of India's foreign policy?
So, India,
very short, fundamental strategic orientation or strategic objective
so we have always
overall.
some multi-alignment.
Is that an objective or is it a means towards some objective?
So it's so objective is national interest first.
It's too abstract. Yes, no challenging that. But how is that national interest manifested or translated into a strategic approach?
So we believe that every nation, I mean, in the neighborhood, we have a neighborhood first policy. Outside the
Again, it's a means, yes, again 100%. I'm trying to push you into answering my question. What is the strategic orientation and objective of all these policies, multi-alignment or non-alignment or neighborhood first? They are instruments, no? Overall objective, what would you say? What do you want? What does the Indian leadership?
So I neighborhood and a very coherent and a rule-based order, democratic.
Benign environment for your development, free of troubles and pressures. So to constantly examine the changing external environment to ensure that ABC through non-alignment, through neighborhood first. What has been the key challenge to that objective?
So I believe, first of all, the hostile neighborhood we have.
In what sense is the neighborhood hostile?
So Pakistan has always been, so post the 3 wars that we had with Pakistan, they have always tried to wage a proxy war with us.
Always or
So they are,
since some specific time?
so since 1981 they have been problem using it.
They were a problem even before that? So is the problem in the very conception of Pakistan?
Yes, I believe with the way
Two-nation theory,
And that is what
would you say, antithetical to the very basis of India and therefore an irreconcilable?
apart from that, the way they have been focusing on Kashmir issue because of the very reason, because of the very two.
So is the Kashmir issue a strategic challenge? Has it been? Or a challenge to the strategic orientation?
So it is a challenge. So we have seen the issue being raised in UN after 50 years.
So what is so unthinkable or troublesome about being raised in the UN? A lot of issues are raised, people come and talk and go. What's the problem with that?
So to an extent, it does affect the way the countries think about India, because we have always tried to be a democratic nation. We have always tried to always tried to enforce democracy, and we.
How does somebody raising Kashmir issue in the UN take away from your enforcing democracy or practicing democracy?
It does not, but it does affect your foreign policy. We have seen issues like the EU discussing CAA. I mean, yes, practically they don't.
You discuss with them if they're discussing. What is the problem about it?
Sir, practically they don't. They don't affect, but yes, for overall environment and for overall.
stability.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, you're on track. I'm just pushing you. This is the term political Islam. What do we understand by that?
So Islam has always been, so in terms of religion, it has always tried to enforce social, economic as well as political aspect. And by political, so political. So political, I mean, it has always that political aspect in it, philosophy about it. So Khalifa we had. So the origin of that comes from Islam in itself.
It is an inherent part of Islam, you are saying?
Yes, it is an inherent part, but yes, with changing times, such scholars have said that it cannot be. It has not to be an inherent part with the way democracies are shaping up. And I think, in my personal opinion, I believe the word political Islam is used in a negative connotation rather than a positive one. So that is one major factor with the way.
Do you know of any manifestation of political Islam
So,
in today's contemporary world?
so
Manifestation.
the way ISIS proclaimed caliphate over the regions in in 3 nations, that is
very recent and very relatively minor, or is
yes, sir.
major problem?
So I also believe that
Counts for very much. ISIS? Did they count for very?
So it was in fact the biggest threat. So now it's to a very good extent neutralized.
Any other? Political Islam?
So Al Qaeda is one, but
Yeah, okay. I don't have that in mind. Those
so
are
Taliban.
Those are. Yes.
So Taliban, Turkey, yes sir. So I was about to say, I thought it might not be the right way to say.
OIC.
So OIC right now, I don't think it's much relevant in the way.
Is it political Islam?
So I believe it's not now, at least for now, it's not. With the way countries are diverse, with the way, so the countries in itself, the OIC countries have issues within themselves, I believe it's not.
Thank you. We don't have time. I've taken. Thank you very much.
What is the ideological difference between Shia sect and Sunni sect? On which issue?
So it's about the caliphate issue. Technically the caliphate issue. The Shia Muslims felt that Hazrat Ali, the cousin of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, was the right candidate to lead the caliphate rather than Hazrat Abu Bakr. Hazrat Umar. And I believe that thing was the start of the conflict between Shias and Sunnis. So they have always tried.
First Khalifa? What was Khilafat movement and why Gandhiji supported it?
So at the end of First World War, so the Muslims felt that the Treaty of Service was against the Caliphate. It dismantled the Caliphate of Turkey, the Ottoman Empire. And the Muslims here in undivided India were of the opinion that it was against them, and hence they started the Khilafat movement. At that same time, we had other issues. We had the recent Jallianwala Bagh massacre at that period, and we also had economic crisis there. The prices were going up at that stage, and Gandhiji felt that it's the right time to make sure that we are united and we fight united, and hence he led the way of Khilafat movement to non-cooperation movement.
Who was a prominent opponent? Sorry.
Yes, sir.
Another leader who was a prominent opponent
So
of Gandhiji's support to the Khilafat movement.
So-
Criticized him.
I don't recall.
Jinnah
Okay, sir.
was totally against.
Okay,
And
sir.
he said this is appeasing the wrong section of opinion.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
हेलो फ्रेंड्स, दीक्षांत आईएएस प्रस्तुत करता है दीक्षांत फ्री कोचिंग एंड स्कॉलरशिप प्रोग्राम, भारत सरकार एवं गैर सरकारी संगठनों द्वारा वित्त पोषित। हेलो फ्रेंड्स, दीक्षांत फ्री कोचिंग एंड स्कॉलरशिप प्रोग्राम ऑनलाइन कोर्स का लाभ लेने के लिए गूगल प्ले स्टोर पर जाकर दीक्षांत एजुकेशन टाइप करें और हमारे ऐप को डाउनलोड करें, या दीक्षांत आईएएस के यूट्यूब चैनल को सब्सक्राइब करें तथा ऑफलाइन कोर्स का लाभ लेने के लिए या इस बारे में विशेष जानकारी प्राप्त करने के लिए हमारे मोबाइल नंबर पर संपर्क करें 7428092240 9312511015 8851301204